Hi, I'm Jim McCann, founder of 1-800-Flowers. We created this podcast to share the wonderful people we get to interact with, we get to meet, we get to know, and most importantly, get to learn from. So I invite you to join us on this journey here on the Celebrations Chatter podcast. It's a rare treat for me because I get to introduce you to a friend of mine who's been very important to me, to my brother Kevin, to my brother Chris, frankly, to our whole family, and probably to tens of thousands of families here in New York, particularly on Long Island, over many years. So I want to tell you about Walter Stockton. I want to introduce him to you, and I think by getting Walter to share his story with us, we'll learn a lot about the disability community and the needs they have, and how things are progressing in terms of caring for a significant percent of our population that has special needs. So thank you, Walter Stockton. Welcome.
Thank you, Jim. It's great to be here, and thank you for that wonderful introduction.
I know your story well, and I can't wait to share it. And like my wife, you come from Western Pennsylvania originally, but then you migrated here to the east end of Long Island as a young man, and you were, I remember, teaching at Suffolk County Community College. But before that, you worked at Mary Haven.
Yes,
right?
my first job out of college was to go to Mary Haven, and when I graduated from college in 1969, you did one of two things. You either taught or you went to Vietnam.
Yep.
And I thought that teaching was a better alternative. But I was a liberal arts major in school, so I really didn't have a lot of teaching background or even teaching skills.
Where did you go to college?
I went to California University in California, Pennsylvania.
Yes.
That's a state college in Pennsylvania.
And my wife went to Indiana University, a state college in Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
You grew up on a farm in Pennsylvania.
I grew up on a small farm in Western Pennsylvania. We raised animals, we raised vegetables. It was a great way to start your life. My father also had a grocery store, so we provided produce and meat actually to the grocery store. And at the time it wasn't so great, but looking back on it, it was a wonderful way to grow up.
And great values produced. So you moved to Long Island to teach at Mary Haven. Tell us what Mary Haven is.
Mary Haven is a private residential school for children and adults with developmental disabilities. At the time I worked there, it was run by the diocese, and there were 3 lay people and about 15 nuns running the program.
Yeah.
And I had the wonderful opportunity to work for a woman named Sister Jean Bouchard, who was the administrator of the program, the principal of the school. And I was there for 4 years, and I have to say that of all the leaders I've met in my life, she was the best. And I learned more from her in 4 years than my 4 years previous in college.
That's amazing. The intersection of our history is that my brother Kevin, so I'm the oldest of 5. Chris, who was the CEO of 1-800-Flowers, is the youngest of us. I have 2 sisters, and sandwiched in the middle is my brother Kevin, who was born with developmental disabilities. And before you got to Mary Haven, Kevin lived there for a couple of years, we recall. And I remember every Sunday we drive out to see my brother Kevin, and it was the end of the earth, from Queens all the way out to eastern Long Island. And it's not so east now, but back then it was very east. And so I have many, many, many memories of Mary Haven. And after Mary Haven, where'd you go?
When I was at Mary Haven, I did some recreation, I did some phys ed, and then I ended up in a residential department running the residential program. But I always stayed involved with the rec program. So I had students from Suffolk County Community College come and work from the recreation program at the college, come and work at Mary Haven and work with the kids that we had there. And I met the lady who ran the program. She was expanding the program, and after 4 years at Mary Haven, she asked me to apply for a job at the college in the therapeutic recreation leadership program. I applied and I got that job, so then I moved on to Suffolk Community College.
And here you are, a young man from Pennsylvania, in Suffolk County, Long Island, teaching pretty much the golden years, huh?
Well, it was pretty interesting because I was 24 years old.
And your students were much younger.
It was actually a time when there were a lot of returning students. So
they were older.
Half of the class was older than I was.
Yeah.
But it was a wonderful opportunity and a wonderful experience. And I didn't have to spend a lot of time in the classroom because I was a fieldwork supervisor placing students in programs for people with disabilities throughout Suffolk County. So in nursing homes and state hospitals and in places like Mary Haven. And since those organizations wanted my students. They welcomed us to come in because the students were free help, basically.
Yeah.
But from my perspective, I got to go in there and observe all these programs and see what worked,
Who was doing
what
well,
didn't
wasn't,
work, and just sort of put it in the back of my mind, because I knew that as much as I like teaching, that there was another direction for me.
You know, just several weeks ago, Mary Lou and I, my wife Mary Lou and I, went to a fundraising backyard barbecue that Vicki Schneps ran. Vicki's a wonderful lady here in New York, a publisher of community newspapers from Manhattan, Brooklyn, Queens, Nassau County, Suffolk County. She owns a company called Dan's Papers, which is very popular in the Hamptons, and now she tells me expanding to Miami. But she and her husband, who you know her and you knew him well, he's since passed, but they created an organization called WORC, WORC, an agency like the agencies you run that cares for people with disabilities, particularly developmental disabilities. And so Mary Lou and I went to support her at a backyard fundraiser, and her guest of honor that day and a friend of hers is Geraldo Rivera. And he plays a role in your life too, I know. And he told me that day he's 80 years old. He looks terrific, and he's full of energy. But Geraldo Rivera changed the world that you live and work in, and have been such a leader in for these 45 or so years. And as I understand the story, for those of you not from the New York area or not old enough, like the young punks I get to work with here every day, Geraldo Rivera is an interesting fellow, a journalist, a TV reporter, investigative reporter. And he did a series back in the, was it the 60s, late 60s?
Mid-70s.
70s.
Mid-70s, yes.
Yeah, that's right. When the first Governor Cuomo was governor,
Mm-hmm.
and he went to a state hospital in Staten Island called Willowbrook. And he snuck in with cameras and did an expose on the conditions at Willowbrook State Hospital of the people with developmental disabilities who were there, and the care that they weren't getting, and the deplorable conditions. And as a result of that investigative report that Geraldo did and ran on ABC, the governor and the legislature acted, and the governor produced something called the Willowbrook Decree, which said we're going to close down all these state hospitals, and there were probably a half a dozen of them around the state. And we're going to push these people who are in that congregate care back into their communities. And that's a better way to deliver service. The cynic in me said it also makes it less visible, and why fix the problem when we can hide the problem? But that's the cynic in me. Net, it's been good, because in fact, that congregate care kind of solution for people with special needs was not a good one. And you're here in Suffolk Community, in Suffolk Community College as teacher. You know all these programs in and around Long Island. You know who does well, who doesn't do well. And as I understand it, you went to a group of business folks there and said, hey guys, these people being put out of Willowbrook, many of them are from our community and communities. Why don't we pass the hat? And in my spare time, I'll find a place and we'll open up a group home and at least take 10 of these people in and put them right here in our community where they belong and care for them. Is that the birthing story of what became IGHL?
That's pretty much how it happened. And at the time, Geraldo Rivera formed the One-to-One Foundation.
That's right, yeah.
It was run by a guy named Paul Dolan. And I made an application after I put together an organization called IGHL.
Which stands for Independent Group Home Living.
Made an application for a grant for the One-to-One Foundation. And they gave me $15,000. And I
always thought it was 10, but
it was 15,000. And my father had to co-sign a note for me for 15 because I couldn't get it on my own. And so I had $30,000 to start up a group home. And I found a place in Mount Sinai that had been an adult home type. It was not a big place. It was a nice house, but it was pretty worn down. It had been closed for a few years. So I took that $30,000 to renovate the house.
But you had to create enough for profit to own all of this. And here you are, this young kid who's teaching at Suffolk Community College, and you didn't know what you didn't know.
What I thought was going to happen was that, teaching college is great, but you have a lot of free time. So I thought that the group home would be an adjunct to my
Something
working
else you
life.
did, yeah.
Yes, and it also would make my teaching more real because I was still doing stuff. I wasn't just teaching. So we opened this first group home, and right in the middle of the purchase and the renovation, the guy that I leased it from, because we had to lease it, we couldn't buy it, he sold it. So he sold it to this gentleman named Bruce Acker, and Bruce was my age, but he came from some money, and he came and he looked at things over, and I didn't know what the hell was going to happen. You know, I didn't know if he was going to pull it or whatever it was, and he says to me, "You can't get much done with $30,000." I says, "I know, that's all I have," and he says, "Well, I'll match that."
And you've been friends with Bruce ever since.
We've been friends with Bruce ever since, and that was 1978. Last year in 2022, Bruce donated that house to us.
Isn't that something?
After all those years, yes, sir.
What a terrific story.
It's a great story. He's a great guy, and a big part of our history.
You get these local business guys to help you out. They become your board effectively. You create this not-for-profit. Fast forward to today. Being in the not-for-profit world is not for the faint of heart. You've been through so many changes, so many governors, so many New York State legislatures fighting for reimbursement for your efforts. How big is, IGHL became quite a large agency, but then you looked around and you said, wait a minute, there's other agencies like us in adjacent communities, and we're having a tough time managing our costs. Isn't it silly that there's so many of us? Why don't we take our best accounting systems, our best logistics systems, our best management, our best training capabilities, and start to combine some of these agencies in the not-for-profit world so they can lever the best practices and reduce their centralized expenses so you can put more into programming. And so you went around and you said, Mary Haven's over here, CDD is over here. We all do the same kinds of things. We all have vehicles to transport these people. We all have medical staffs. Why don't we consolidate? So IGHL started to partner with other agencies, and now you created a brand as a holding company for these agencies to put all your best practices and centralized service together, and you call that Connection with a unique spelling.
KINEXION. KINEXION.
And tell us what the meaning, you and your team just last year came up with that name and why it just resonated with you when you heard Connection.
It wasn't the Connection name that resonated with me, but the middle of that word has an X. And if you put a little dot on top of the X, it looks like a little person that we've used forever.
Yeah.
And it was person-centered. So everything we try to do is person-centered. We're trying to provide the best life for people that they can have. And once I saw the person in the middle of that, because it's a funny spelling, it's different. It does pop up quick on when you Google it.
Yeah.
But that little person did it for me. I had to think about it for a while, but it did it for me. But I do want to say that putting all these things together and understanding the benefits from it, I had a good teacher from that. And for many years, I observed what you did here at 1-800-Flowers. And every time you brought in a company, you would share that with me and tell me what the benefits were of doing that. Mm-hmm. So the foundation of what we did was really based on our relationship.
And vice versa. I've watched, you and I become friends. I think we first met in the early 90s. And we had a mutual friend named Danny Frank who introduced us. And we did some promotional things together with IGHL here at Flowers. Did some things that were fundraising kinds of things for your agency. And finally, I remember I got to know you and like you, and I confided in you that my brother Kevin was in a wonderful place up in Sullivan County, but my parents had just passed. And although we're all still here and Kevin's still the centerpiece of our family, getting up every weekend to 3 hours north of here in all kinds of weather was getting tougher and tougher. And he wasn't as much a part of our family as we wanted to. So I asked you if your staff would possibly consider evaluating Kevin to see if he'd be appropriate for your program. And I think it was in 1994. In fact, Kevin moved into one of your group homes in Mauritius, and that changed our lives. It changed our lives because Kevin is very much the centerpiece of our family. He's at all of our birthdays and anniversaries and graduations and dance recitals, and he gets punished and sent to those too. And that changed our lives. And we just wish our parents had lived long enough to see how well Kevin is doing, thanks to you and the team you've built. And so it's a two-way street, Walter, because I watch when you and I walk around, we'll talk about Smile Farms now, but when you and I walk around the Smile Farms campus or your main office building and treatment center in Manaville, everybody knows you. Every one of your clients knows you, and you hear them call your name out with great warmth and affection. And you walk around every place you're in, and I've mimicked that from you. Every day I'm in our offices here or in our offices in New York or in Chicago or in Medford. I make it a point to walk around and see everybody, say hello to everybody. And I learned that from you.
Well, thank you, Jim.
We put our heart into everything we do. We are farmers, bakers, florists, and makers who grow and create with a passion. Made with love at every step of the way. Because at the end of the day, we know you're sending more than a gift. 1-800-Flowers, share with love.
Well, to tell the story, people who are part of our community have heard us talk about Smile Farms. And Smile Farms now is a not-for-profit where we help agencies like IGHL and Free and half a dozen other agencies that already have programs that are already caring for people with these needs to find work opportunities, career and skill development opportunities. And we started out by just providing jobs in mostly in agricultural settings, but now we're also finding jobs for those people who come through our programs to work in the private community too, particularly in the restaurant scene. We have so many wonderful restaurateurs have helped us. Just recently, we had Tom Colicchio on our show here, who from Kraft Hospitality Group, the famous Kraft restaurant in Manhattan, Small Batch here in Garden City, and he's employed, I think now 7 or 8 or 9 of our Smile Farms workers are now working in his restaurants, and to go and see them be a part of that community. And Tom really creates community in his restaurants. They have the team meeting every day, and I was told recently by the most recent general manager at Kraft that one of our guys stood up that day for the first time at a team meeting and announced how proud he was to be part of the team and how this meant everything to him. And he said, "You're like my family." And he said there wasn't a dry eye in the house.
Yes.
So tell the story about how this idea of yours became Smile Farms.
Well, I think it was our idea, but you and I had talked a number of years about how we could do something together. And with my farming background, I've always had a notion to horticulture and things like that. And I did some reading, I did some studying, and I noticed that in the old days they would call it horticulture for the handicapped, that it was beneficial to people, that people loved working with plants and that environment, which was a non-threatening environment where they could be successful. So I remember the phone call. I called you and I said, "Jim, I have an idea." I said,
expensive idea.
I said, "Why don't we create? Number one, we need employment for our guys, and they aren't the easiest to employ, but they need to be trained. They need to learn how to do things." And I said, horticulture is a great way to do it. And doesn't horticulture sort of back right up to 1-800-Flowers? And I said to you, I know of this. This was a greenhouse center that was closed down, and that we have access to that. Let's go take a look.
And you said, "Bring your checkbook."
Bring your checkbook, yes. And that was our first center, and it's still thriving today. I think that was in the early mid-90s maybe when we started it. And that's our one location. We have 5 now with Smile Farms, and there are 30 people, including Kevin, who's king there.
Yeah.
And they go to work there every single day, and my staff calls that my happy place, because when I'm frustrated, whenever I'm on edge, I get down there and I spend an hour there, and I'm fine for the rest of the day.
Put your hands in the dirt.
Yes, exactly. But it's very successful, and they love the fact that they produce product that ends up at Smile Farms and ends up on TV and ends up being sold in stores and
restaurants,
every place. And
tell them about the deal we did with a great entrepreneur in Long Island, restaurateur Jamie Bonanno.
Jamie has a wonderful idea about creating restaurants and libation places throughout Suffolk County And Jamie came to us and talked about the fact that couldn't you guys grow some stuff for me that I can use in my stores, in my restaurants, and I'll become a part of your whole organization.
What I love is that his other motivation was, I want the young people, because it's all young people working for him. I want the young people who work at the tap room or several tap rooms. One is in Patchogue, and there's a man who's the mayor of Patchogue, Long Island. And Patchogue, Long Island was a town in real struggle. It was in decay. Paul Pontieri became mayor and put this town on his back and rebuilt it. And now it's a beautiful place, and people come from all over to go to restaurants and go to the theater there and shop in downtown Patchogue. And he also happens to be the chairman of the board of IGHL. Of Connection now, yep. So wonderful guy. And Jamie told us the story that when he was a bartender with his partner, who's now partner at Dublin Deck, which is a famous waterfront establishment in Patchogue. When he decided to leave there and open up his own restaurant, he went to Paul, and Paul literally and figuratively put his arm around his shoulder and said, "You're going to do it here in Patchogue, pal." And he walked him down the street and he said, "This building's available. I want you to lease or buy this building, and I'm going to help you to get your place open with permitting. We want this to be Restaurant Row." And Jamie told us the story about the famous and great Paul Pontieri.
And I can tell you another story about Paul Pontieri is that we are developing a group home in Patchogue that Paul found us the property. And there was a family that lives in Chautauqua called the Bennetts. And over the years, Mrs. Bennett has adopted 13 children with Down syndrome.
Oh my God.
And they all live with her in her house. Now she's 81 years old. She has some other children of her own. Yeah, she's a kid. She has some other children of her own that help her, but she's reaching the end of her rope. So I talked to Paul and I said, Paul, this house can be special. I said, why don't we think about trying to get the bureaucracy to understand that we need to keep this family together? And so I've worked with the commissioner of OPWDD, a lady named Carrie Delaney, who's a wonderful woman.
Yeah, you introduced me to her when we did an opening here in Woodbury.
And I said, Carrie, look at this family. We want to keep this family together. So
she got it.
So she got it right away. So we're building that house. And not only are we building the house, but there's an apartment in the house where the mother can live.
Oh,
So
terrific.
we're keeping it all together, and it's going to be,
The culture will be there.
oh yeah. And they can, and the nice thing is it's close to the railroad station. So maybe we'll be able to get some help for that, because help is so hard for us to find right now,
Yeah.
especially the people where the rubber meets the road, the hands-on people. It's very difficult for us to find them. But I'm hoping that location with the access to the railroad and with Patchogue, with so many young people in
Yeah.
Patchogue, that we may be able to have a successful
So I
program.
started to say about our friend Jamie. What I liked about him is he has this terrific chain called the Tap Room, and they make all their food there on-prem, and they really pride themselves on great plating and presentation and local ingredients. So he said, I can't get enough of the microgreens and this and the lettuces I need. And he says, and I want the young people who come here to feel that we're not just having a great restaurant, that we're doing something. So he says, I want a team building exercise. So he brings them to Smile Farms, and he brings them all on the same day, and they all get their aprons on, and they get with our Smile Farmers, and they get their hands in the dirt, and we have beds that are devoted to the tap room. And they grow. Now when she's behind the bar and she's making a drink for someone, when she's putting mint in the drink to make a South Sider, she has something to talk to her clientele about, oh, I helped grow this mint, and tells them about Smile Farm and a team building exercise that they go down once a month or sometimes more frequently and tend to the beds and grow, and our guys take care of it day to day. It's such a good story. He's a great young man. He's a great entrepreneur. He's a great restaurateur, and he's so conscious of culture and doing things for the community and for us and for our people.
You know what our farmers love? Our guys go there for dinner sometime, and they make a big deal out of them, and they say, you grew this, and we're doing this for you, and you're ordering this, but it came from Smile Farms, and they just love that.
You've been doing this a long time.
A few years.
And I'm not exaggerating when I say you've affected the lives and the welfare of tens of thousands of people and their families, all throughout New York, and particularly here on Long Island and now elsewhere. What do you want Connection to become, and in say the next 3 to 5 years? It's only a year old. The parent organization. I think there's other agencies around who could benefit from what you built to take some of their expenses out, professionalized a little bit more, have more professional fundraising activities, and allow them to devote more of their resources to programming. As you said, getting the right staff is so difficult. And when you get them, you want to train them, you want to invest in them, you want to give them certification opportunities. So what happens next 3 to 5 years with Connection?
Well, Connection is a part of a whole, right? So Connection is an integral part of the programs for people with developmental disabilities on Long Island. But there's a greater community out there, and that's a statewide community. So my thrust right now is changing the way our care is overseen. So people with developmental disabilities in New York are the only group that's carved out of managed care. And to a lot of people, managed care is a bad word.
Mm-hmm.
But what we've come up with is a program called the CIPPL, and PL stands for provider-led. So I met with Governor Hochul yesterday,
Governor of New York State.
Governor of New York State, to go over this program with her and how it will benefit the people that we serve. Because the reality is, how we're providing our programs now is unsustainable. We don't get enough support from the government. We have more people coming into the system all the time without additional revenue to take care
The
of.
need is unsatiable.
So we've created an organization called Triad My Compass. Triad My Compass is made up of 3 care coordination organizations that oversee the people's lives outside of their organizations to make sure they get the right benefits that they're entitled to. So we have 3 care coordination organizations throughout the state that have formed Triad My Compass. We represent hundreds of agencies. We represent 65,000 of the 100,000 people that are in the services of OPWDD in New York. And we want to create this integrated care system that will take the burden off the state and put it back into providers and let us get rid of a myriad of unfunded mandates that we have to pay for that have nothing to do with people.
It had nothing to do with the end product in terms of the care you give.
All it does is take money away from where we need to put it.
Yeah.
And the governor yesterday, I hope very much that she got it, because we spent a half an hour together talking about this, and we're very close to making this happen. If this happens, I think the future and the sustainability of the programs for people with DD will be in good shape. I'm very, very worried about the future if it stays like it is, because it's basically broken.
Walter, families like the McCann family and people like us and me, my parents when they were alive, never put their head on the pillow at night without saying, what happens after I'm gone? You and the team at IGHL and now Connection have answered that for us. What would you say to the other families who are lucky like us to be involved with proper care and residential care, if appropriate, for their loved ones? What's our responsibility to IGHL, to Connection, and to your team in terms of what we should be doing to help?
Well, if you think back about what I talked about with sustainability, I mean, I think part of the reason that IGHL and Connection have been successful is because we understood from day one that even though it's a nonprofit, even though there's plenty of altruistic reasons, you have to run it as a business.
And you only get reimbursed. You have to have capital to spend to get reimbursed.
Exactly. And if there's more going out than coming in, it doesn't last very long.
Yeah.
So we need to supplement, obviously, all the government income. And we're very cognizant of the fact that we're helping families, and we look to families to really think about how much you can give back. And you and I were talking earlier about some people don't think they can help, but just this last 3 months, we had 2 families that we, unbeknownst to us, that left their homes to us in their wills.
Which is extremely beneficial.
Extremely beneficial. So we can turn those homes into.
And one of them, you told me, had 2 sons with you at IGHL, both of whom have gone for a long time.
For a long time.
And all of a sudden, this family remembered, they didn't have a lot of means, so they really couldn't help. But when they were going, the home was either going to go to nobody or it went to IGHL, and you can monetize that house, use it or monetize it to care for more and more people.
Exactly. And we've got a wonderful team that's working to help us do this, led by Debbie Nyder. And we've got lots of meetings set up with families and how to take this next step forward. And we're happy to help people understand how to do that.
Yeah.
But that's a very important part of where we're going. I didn't, to my regret, I didn't pay a lot of attention to this in the early years because we were
You're
growing.
too busy trying to care for
We
people.
were growing so fast with state money and growing and building new group homes and opening day programs.
As all these
Think
people
about
came out of those
of the
institutions like
Right,
Willowbrook.
exactly. But now as you sit and you can take stock on it, and you can see that the government money isn't going to be enough. So we need all the help we can get.
I remember when you built your first nursing facility. And what you told me then, I said, well, has there been one before? A nursing facility to care for older nursing home needing people who had developmental and other disabilities. And you said, unfortunately, heretofore there wasn't a need because they didn't live long enough.
And
that shook me to my core when I heard that those many years ago. And now you built a nursing facility.
and that becomes sustainable for all the agencies, because before they came with us, when somebody aged out of their program or needed skilled nursing, they had to go to a nursing home. So they had to leave the family. Now with and we have, 3 programs now with 24-hour nursing.
Yeah.
That when somebody needs that, we have that ability to do it. And it's probably the most important thing that we did was to create that that was a birth to death kind of thing.
Yeah.
Because we can create that. Because nobody wants to live in a group home forever and be with IGHL forever, and then all of a sudden say goodbye. You got to go to a nursing home.
Unrelated, unconnected,
yeah,
geographically far away.
And our guys, our guys in nursing homes are sort of second-class citizens.
Yeah.
But in our facilities, it's just like the rest, and
Yeah.
they're still part of the family. They see the same staff. In fact, our 32-bed now is consisted of 32 people that all lived in our group homes
Uh-huh.
that have aged into what the same thing we might need.
Yeah. That's sobering.
It certainly is.
Walter has cared for people since his days at Mary Haven and Port Jefferson back in the 70s. And I think you have 6 or 8 people who used to be in your day program who are still with you now 50 years later.
There's 6 of them, and we're all very close. We get together often, just the 7 of us. And they were in my first phys ed class when I walked into the door at Mary Haven, and I've been involved with them and their families since 1969.
Amazing story. Amazing man, Walter. I'm so proud of what you've done. I'm so proud you're my friend. And I'm so proud that we get to help you and all the people that we put through the Smile Farms program who work there, who learn there. You're a gift to me, a family, and all of Long Island. And we want to project your capabilities as far as we can, because as you remind me all the time, the need is growing all the time for care for these people.
Well, thank you, Jim. And part of the beauty of my job over the years is to get to meet families. And there are none more supportive and none better than the McCann family for what you've done for Kevin and what you've done for the field at large. And my success certainly is based on our friendship, because I've learned so much from you. We've done so many things together.
What we haven't done enough of is play golf.
Well, we got to do more of that, yeah. But maybe because the other thing, it's sort of interfering with that. But I'm very optimistic about the future, but things have to change.
Yeah.
And hopefully,
I'm glad you're there to steer us through this change. It's never been more critical.
well, thank you, Jim.
Thank you
very
Walter.
much.
It's my sister's birthday.
Go to 1-800-Flowers.com.
They have tons of great birthday gifts.
Wow.
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 Happy birthday, baby.
Wow.
Yummy. I got to contain myself.
1-800-Flowers.
Celebrate the people you love.
Well, I hope you enjoyed what you heard, and I know I'll be sharing it forward. I hope you get to as well. Let's keep the conversation going. Follow me along on Twitter at Jim1800Flowers and on LinkedIn at Jim McCann. Hope to talk to you soon.
Thank you for listening to Celebrations Chatter. You can join our community by reaching out at chatter@celebrations.com. And while you're at it, tell us what topics you'd like us to explore here on the Celebrations Chatter podcast. Thank you for listening, and don't forget to share it forward.